Hi, my name's Kai, and I'm an American expat living in Germany. I've lived here for about 5 years now, and I've learned a lot about German culture since I moved here. Even though my mother was German, I was born in Germany, half my family is German, I lived here as a child, and I visited many times before I moved here, there were still many things I didn't know until I actually lived here as an adult. Some of these things have just been simple cultural differences, and some have been pretty confusing. So I can imagine that it can be even more challenging for people who don't know much about the German culture to integrate into Germany than it's been for me. I've talked about some of these cultural differences in other videos that I've linked in the description below. Today we're going to look at some more of these differences to hopefully help those of you who are planning to move here or who have recently moved here. Los geht's! I lived in the US for more than 40 years before I came to Germany. Many of those years were spent on the East Coast, where life tends to be pretty fast-paced and stressful. I felt like I was always in a rush.
I'm late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late.
Life in Germany, on the other hand, is much slower. It's actually been surprising to me how slow it is, and it's taken some getting used to. I still get frustrated sometimes when I have to wait several days for something that would have been done within a few hours in the US. The main things that move much slower here include the bureaucracy, service, and even the amount of time it takes to make friends. I've talked in other videos about Germany's bureaucracy and long wait times for contractors to do work in your apartment, so I'm not going to get into too much detail about these things again here. Suffice it to say that you will have to summon some patience to tackle these things as you transition here. And the process can be confusing and stressful at times. But I think it's important for you to keep your eye on the prize, as they say, because in the long run, it will all be worth it. Another area where things may move slower than expected is when you go to a restaurant. You see, when you've finished your meal, your server won't ask if you want the bill or automatically bring your bill like they do in the US. So if you don't speak up, you may find yourself waiting for a long time. You see, in Germany, when people go out to eat, they often stay for a long time, spending much of their time relaxing and socializing rather than simply eating. In fact, restaurants here typically set reservations for a 2-hour time frame, and it seems that many Germans will stay pretty much the whole time or even longer. So, just because you've finished eating, no one will assume you're ready to leave. Because the exact length of time that people stay at a restaurant can vary, the custom here is for you to ask for the bill whenever you're ready to leave. What I actually do is ask for the bill when the server comes to clear the empty plates by saying, "Wir können auch bezahlen bitte," or "We would also like to pay, please." This is just a small example of how things are expected to go slower here. But in this case, if you just speak up, there actually is a workaround. Don't forget, one of the reasons life in general is calmer and less stressful here is the fact that things do move more slowly. So I encourage you to try taking a slower approach too. The way Germans slow down to actually enjoy life is one of my favorite parts of the culture. Okay, the final example of things moving slowly that I want to discuss is making friends. I've seen many American expats online complain that it's really hard to make friends in Germany. And yes, this is another thing that moves slowly here. But the slowness is because of a cultural difference in how friendship is defined. In the US, the term friend is very broad. It could be someone you've known for a while and have had multiple interactions with, or it could be the barista at the local coffee shop. Personally, I would argue that these are more like acquaintances, but I guess that's just me. In Germany, a friend is someone that's close to you, like you work closely with them, for example, and you've known them for a long time. So yes, it takes longer to make real friends in Germany, but you should know that once you make a friend here, they'll be your friend for life. So again, I think it's worth taking the time. Now this may seem incredibly obvious. Of course, Germans, like most people, appreciate kindness. But unfortunately, I've witnessed some expats and tourists from the US treat people working in restaurants, shops, cafes, and other customer service type situations very unkindly. They can come across as very pushy and demanding. This may work in the US, where service employees are used to being treated poorly, but this will not go over well in Germany. Unfortunately, I've seen it happen many times, where an American, without even starting with a greeting, goes into a bakery, for example, and demands in English something like, "I want 2 croissants." This is just completely wrong. Incidentally, I've also heard many Americans complain online that Germans are rude. Well, it's possible that it could have something to do with differences in cultural values or understanding. For better results, I suggest you instead start with a greeting in German. A simple friendly "Hallo" will suffice. Then you can ask whether or not they speak English by saying, "Können Sie Englisch sprechen?" Many Germans speak English, but you shouldn't expect it or assume that they do. So, this is a nice way to ask without rudely going straight into English. Next, whatever it is you want, make sure you say please and thank you. Believe me, you will get much better results if you're genuinely friendly and polite. I know it seems crazy that I even have to say this, but like I said, I've seen the opposite too many times. Another thing that I've noticed is that Americans tend to be quite loud in comparison to Germans. From my perspective, everything, from vehicles to construction to the way people talk, is just way louder in the US. So maybe Americans are just desensitized to noise, and this might help explain why many of them talk so loudly, at least when they first come here. In Germany, everything is generally quieter. You'll mostly notice it when riding public transportation, where most people just sit quietly and don't talk. This quietness also extends to restaurants and public spaces like parks. I've also noticed that Germans tend to use their car horns much less than Americans do. Don't get me wrong, Germans can definitely be loud sometimes, especially when soccer or beer is involved. But generally, they're quieter than Americans. For example, it may seem completely normal to talk on your phone when you're riding the subway. But Germans may give you a dirty look if you do that too loudly here. Germans even go so far as to having rules about being quiet. In most German cities, between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. and all day Sunday, they have quiet time or Ruhezeit. Oh, and some German trains even have entire cars that are designated as quiet cars. So if this is something you haven't considered, being quieter may help you avoid the rude looks or stares that some Americans complain about. If you pay attention to what Germans do and make an effort to understand the cultural differences, you can adjust your behavior and fit in better. Now that we've taken a look at some cultural differences, I just want to end with some final tips. First, I think it's really important to be aware of possible cultural differences to understand why Germans might be reacting unexpectedly to something you're doing. Of course, in an ideal world, cultural understanding would be a two-way street. But just like other people, many Germans can be so used to doing things their way that they often assume everyone knows what to do in every situation. Something that may be totally normal to a German may be very odd to an American, and vice versa. Of course, without having a strong understanding of a country's specific cultural nuances, we're all going to make some mistakes when we travel or move to a new place. This is to be expected, so don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. It's all part of the process, and it will get better and easier to navigate over time. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful. If I was unclear about anything, please let me know in the comments. Also, please let me know if there are any other cultural differences that you would like me to talk about or that you would like me to clarify. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Tschüss, bis später!